Hi, welcome back. If you're new here, we're gonna go through a full spoiler reading vlog of my favorite book of all time, Malibu Rising by Taylor Jenkins Reid. I'm obsessed with this book. I read this book about a year ago and I just never stopped thinking about it. So I wanted to go back and see if I would read it the same. This is also after I've already reread it, but I forgot to do an intro, so here we are. But I'm gonna kind of take you through the annotations I made. I had some that I had when I first read the book, so you'll see me kind of mention those, but I also am gonna show you all the new annotations I make. I also forgot to mention what this book is about. His book is about the Riva children. So the Riva children are children of this famous rock star named Mick Riva. In the Taylor Jenkins Reid universe, she has about four books that are part of the same universe, and in that universe, there's the famous singer named Mick. He marries Evelyn Hugo from the Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo. He appears in a party in Daisy Jones' book. It follows his children, who are Nina, Jay, Hud, and Kit. And you kind of just see their life, and it spans a whole day. So it's set in Malibu, and you kind of know that in this year of 1983 that there's a fire in Malibu, and this is the start of it. So you kind of get a beginning. It starts at 7 a.m. and it ends at 7 a.m. the next day. And you kind of get it hour by hour. So you get a little backstory of the Riva kids, and you find out like everything that's going on with them and why the fire starts, which is like the big thing. So yeah, I really love this book. So great. So we're gonna get into that. I just forgot to mention what the book is about. The first hour, there's technically like three chapters in there, and you get a little bit of each of like the Riva children. So the first chapter is centered around Nina and like her breakup with Brandon, which is her husband. And Brandon, that's like the biggest thing that Nina is going through, is that she's in this big house in Malibu that she never even wanted, and she's in it because she bought it with her husband, who she can't even remember why she like even married him in the first place. So she's kind of going through that. Then you meet Jay and Kit. Jay and Kit are Nina's younger siblings. Um, Jay is like younger than Nina, and then they have another brother, and then they have Kit. But you get the introduction to Jay and Kit, and they like are trying to get Nina to go surfing with them, and she doesn't answer. So then they go surfing on their own, and you kind of get a little bit of backstory that Jay is kind of going through like his own breakup, like he recently got broken up with, and then Kit, she's young, but it's also like she's kind of just getting exposed to like more things, and she's just kind of like, I don't really care. And Jay's like, oh, like I think this guy likes you, and she's like, it's whatever. And he's like, okay, that's weird. But you get a little backstory of like more Jay and his ex-girlfriend Ashley. And then in the next part, you meet Hudson, which is another brother of theirs, and you find out that Hudson is actually dating Ashley now, and the family doesn't know. So it's kind of like a lot. Like the first is the like 26 pages in, and so you get the introduction to Nina, and you find out like, okay, she's dealing with her like her splitting from her husband because he cheated on her with pro tennis player Carrie Soto. She left Nina for Carrie, and Nina's on her own. And then, yeah. So I really like the way that kind of sets up and introduced the characters. And there's something at the end of each chapter that like leaves you like, it gives you enough to like be like, okay, there's a lot more to the story than what we know. And it's kind of like it alludes to that fact, and I feel like I really like that about it. I think that's kind of what hooked me the first time, was that okay, like it was only three chapters and I'm already like, okay, wait, what's going on here? So yeah, I have a couple annotations already. Um, but I'm now at 8 a.m., so it's an hour into the day. And we'll see what happens next. But Jay and Hudson, they're the brothers. and they're very, very close. But it's mentioned at the last chapter or the last paragraph of Hudson's chapter that Hudson and Jay are half brothers. So even though they've always treated each other like brothers, they're still half brothers. So that's something that comes into play and I forgot about, and I'm like excited to kind of read that again. Um because it is a lot. Like, like Hudson is dating Jay's ex girlfriend. And that's something that in Jay's chapter that you find out is like he lies and he puts on this front that he's not that upset or hurt about it, but he was pretty upset and hurt about it. And like he's very good at like hiding his emotion when it came to that versus like they know Nina's going through a divorce or like a split with her husband, and they're worried like Kit's worried about her. Kit's like, I feel like she's depressed, like I don't like, I want to check in. And Jay's like, oh, like, don't worry about her. Like, she's fine. Like, she'll get over it. Like, I got over my breakup. But in reality, he's also lying to Kit and telling her, I got over it real quick. But he was a mess right after it happened. Rightfully so. Like, I think rightfully so. But yeah. And then you have Hudson, who's like, I love this woman so much, but I also know what I did to get this woman may not have been like it may not have been right, but I know I'm meant to be with this woman. And I just like, I think that's like also very valid sometimes for some people is like they're put in certain situations and they meet the right person, but then they also like are like, I don't like, I really feel bad about what I did to get this person. So yeah, but yeah, I think from each sibling, like you're getting enough to kind of be like curious. But we're already getting like one of the quotes I really liked in this book was I think it was in Kit and Jay's part. Yeah, it was in Kit and Jay's part. And it says Mick Riva's shadow excelled at haunting each of his children. The way that like speaks volumes is insane, because in Nina's chapter you also find out that like her dad is Mick Riva, and they make a lot of comparisons, especially because she's in the media and she's going through this very public like split with her husband. They make a lot of references. They made a reference of like, oh, like father like daughter like type of thing off of one single picture, and it really upsets her. Like the way that it's written is it it really really upsets her just thinking about it. And it's like, yeah, and you don't really know much at this point, but you know that each of the siblings have like a similar a similar idea about their father, Mikriva. He's this very famous guy, but none of them like him. Like none of them have like good feelings about him. And that's something that I think shows in Hud's chapter where he's a half sibling of the siblings. And then with Jay, it's like it's mentioned that he's haunted by his like he's famous for being a surfer, but at the end of the day, it's always mentioned that he's McReeva's son. Like he's never gonna be just Jay. And then Nina, it's the same way too. It's like she's famous for all these other things, and then she married this man that went and left her, and they're still making comparisons to her and her father. And that's something too that I'm like, no, I get that, because it's like you are your you are your parents' children, and that's something that I feel like very much comes into play in this book, and I think that's one of the reasons why I liked it so much. But I'm only one chapter in, and I'm like, it's still solidifying for me, so we'll keep going and see. But I'm about to start 8 a.m., so we'll see. This is hour 2, so 8 a.m. And you get the first part is like Nina. So you see she's out on the water, she's out on the waves. She's really just kind of like enjoying her time there and trying to soak it in and not worry too much about like the past. um, the past and everything. And then she's also trying not to worry about the future because she's about to start going through a divorce. So she's kind of just trying to enjoy the moment. And that's something I felt like I really liked because it's mentioned that there are things in her past that she's trying to forget about, and then there's things that she's worried about that are coming up. But one of the big things that's mentioned is how Nina truly doesn't want to have this big party, but it's an annual party that the Riva family throws every single year. And it started when they were throwing the party in their like little house, but now that Nina has this huge house in Malibu, people have been going to that place and they've been having the party there. And since the party's gotten so big, she knows that there's no way she can even cancel it. One, because it's just gotten so big and so popular that people know that it's gonna happen no matter what. Like they're just gonna show up even though there's like no invitation, no nothing. They're just gonna show up. It gives almost like Gatsby vibes, where it's like there's a party, like you know, there's a party that's gonna happen and stuff, and everybody wants to be there. And then second thing is it's mentioned that these parties are so like iconic and infamous that all these things have happened, all these different celebrities have been here, all these um, different situations, stuff like that. But Nina makes a mention that she doesn't even know if half of that stuff is true that she's heard that's happened at her party, because all she's ever been really worried about is making sure that her family enjoys their time. And that's partially why she knows she cannot cancel the party either, is because she wants her family to be happy and she wants her siblings to be happy, and she knows that they all really enjoy it. Right after that, like right after Nina's, like you get Nina's explanation of like the parties and like this and that, you jump into like a flashback. With the flashback, one of my favorite things is that it's like it has this line that is so beautifully written. I was obsessed with it. So the line that I was like, oh, okay, and this is why I love Taylor Jenkins Reid, was it's the first line of the part that starts with the 1956, which is the flashback, and it says, "Our family histories are simply stories. They are myths we create about the people who came before us in order to make sense of ourselves." I was like, okay, that's the first sentence of this flashback. So that to me is like, okay, this flashback or this story that's in the past is very, very impactful to these characters. Then right after that, we get a paragraph that says, "The story of June and Mick Riva seemed like a tragedy to their oldest child, Nina. It felt like a comedy of errors to their first son, Jay. It was an origin story for their second son, Hud, and a mystery to the baby of the family, Kit. To Mick himself, it was just a chapter of his memoir, but to June, it was always and forever a romance." Like, the way like, I don't know. I just really appreciated that because it shows how, one, like the differences of how each of the siblings viewed it, but how the parents themselves both viewed that. Like, to the mom, June, it was everything to her. And then to Mick, it was nothing, which really sets the tone for the dynamics that they all have with each other and stuff. So throughout the rest of this part, you kind of get an introduction to June and to Mick, and you see them go on their first date. One thing I thought was interesting is that it's mentioned that June's 17 and Mick is actually 23, which I guess back then wasn't that crazy, but to me it's actually really crazy. But yeah, I thought that was interesting. A couple things that are mentioned that I was like, okay, like that's that's a little interesting. The place where Mick takes June on the date is on their first date. Is this place that June is like has been to with her parents, and she knows it's kind of pricey. Whenever she's gone with her parents, she's really never been allowed to get more than just water and split a plate with somebody else. So she's very thankful that he's taken her to this place and stuff. And a lot of the stuff that's kind of said throughout their date, it shows that they're being very, very open with each other. And they're both talking to each other since they're so young. They're talking to each other about their dreams and stuff. And Mick shares that he wants to be famous, he wants to do music, that he's a singer. And then he ends up asking June what her dream is. And I like this part that she says that she dreams of like having all these extravagant things and stuff like that. But she decides to share with Mick her realistic dream. And in her realistic dream, she really just shares that she wants to have a family. Like, she wants to have two kids. She wants to have a husband. She wants to have a house on the water in Malibu. She wants to have a house with two sinks because she saw a friend of hers that had, their parents had a house with two sinks, and she just thought, like, I've always wanted that. Like, I just want to be able to brush my teeth next to my husband, which it's kind of like cute and funny. And I think that's something that I like. I was like, that's such a cute dream. Like, she's so young. Like, it just makes sense. Like, it just made sense to me. Um, and that was one thing that she like mentions, that she's very grateful and that her family really doesn't have too much money. But because she's like mentioning all these things, Mick makes a point to tell her, like, I really don't have money at all. And this was another line that I was like, okay, I kind of really like that. And it says, I don't come from any money at all, but I don't think what you're born into says anything about where you're headed. Like, okay, like, he said get that bad. But I just really thought that was a good quote because I think that sometimes some things people forget about. But yeah, so that's all during the date. And as they're about to leave, and they've already been served their dessert, everything, as they're about to leave, he tells June, like, oh, do you want to go use the restroom? And she's like, yeah, actually. She goes to use the restroom. And she's on her way out. She notices that Mick is right at the door. And something that goes through her mind is that she's worried, or she thinks that he didn't pay the bill and that they're skipping out on the bill. But then she's immediately like, no, like, I'm just in my head. Like, I'm just, that's something I'm thinking, but that's not true. And I thought that was kind of interesting because it's showing that she's not fully trusting him. Like, her, I guess, like, her gut is telling her, like, don't trust him. But then she's immediately playing that back and it's like, no, like, it's okay. It's okay. Which is kind of interesting. Um, but yeah, and so throughout the rest of the part, you kind of see that Mick is like slow, like really starting to like her, and they're both really starting to like each other. The relationship between June and Mick is very much a choice for Mick, and it's not a choice for June. June is falling in love with this man, like she cannot help herself. Versus with Mick, it's more of like she's a nice girl, like she could be everything I want her to be. Like she could be like somebody I could be with, but not truly like he's feeling it, but not the same way June is. And I think that's something that really goes that we see play along throughout the rest of their interaction, like their relationship. And I truly, truly love this part. And I feel like I'm gonna say that about every single part. But I feel like this part just like you get the introduction to the siblings in the first hour. In this hour, it's the second hour, and you get the introduction to the parents. And you kind of get the sense that this is the past that Nina does not want to be thinking about. But does that affect her future? That's the real point. But yeah, and I really do like this. I feel like part of the reason I'm obsessed with Nina as a character is because of her parents. And that's something like the dynamics that that family has as a whole was something I truly, truly related to when I first read the book. And as I think about it more and more and more, and like it's been about a year since I read it. So throughout this past year, one of the things I truly think about is just that quote of like, the stories of our family are myths we tell ourselves to like understand like who we are. Yeah, that for me, that was one of the things. Was like, this is probably one of the books I take the most quotes from and think about in my day-to-day life. So I'm probably gonna have a lot more of these, but fully love this book. Okay, so literally like just a page into this hour. And one of the things they say is that like Nina looks a lot like her mom and she feels a lot like her mom. And she says it more like her looks. And then she says that she's 25 and then she felt young to her because she was so much older than 25 in her soul. She had always had a hard time reconciling the facts that her life with the truth, um, the facts of her life with the truth of it. 25, but she felt 40. Married, but she was alone. Childless, yet hadn't she raised kids? Like that's crazy to me because like that's just crazy to me. Just sorry, sorry. I cannot believe that. Not that I cannot believe that, but it's just the way that they're setting up these comparisons between Nina and her mom are so perfectly done. They're great. They're great. I feel you, girl. I really truly do. I cannot. Like, seriously. Seriously. I cannot. I love her. Actually,
Are you doing tell sides again or what?
I really love June. I love her so much. I hate him so much. I'm really upset. The way that she wants him to tell her the truth and the way that he hits her back with, you will be. He would tell her whatever she wanted to hear. That was the way he loved her. I'm literally losing my mind right now. What the heck? Um, so I just finished 9 a.m. and I just love this book. I need to stop saying that. But um in this part you kind of get like a glimpse of like what Nina's doing. She's just finishing surfing. She's going back up to her house. She's getting dressed. You see she's getting like work text stuff like that. She's getting like work stuff. And you kind of get like a little bit more detail of like what her house is, and what she has to do. So like she goes back up, whatever, and then she is contemplating going to do the next thing. Like I feel like at this point Nina's very much just like don't want to do anything. But she knows she has to go to Riva Seafood, which is the family restaurant. One thing that I really like is like that's essentially how Nina's part ends of 9 a.m. And essentially, it's like she realizes it's getting closer to 10 and she realizes she has to go to Reba Seafood and she doesn't want to go, but she knows she has to go because her grandparents own it and her mother owned it and this and that. And in the previous part, you know that June does not want any part of this restaurant. Not at all. Well, then we cut to 1956 and yeah, 56. And you see that like Mick and June have been dating for like 6 months now, and he's really trying to like have sex with her, and she's like not that she's against it because she's really not, but she knows that like in her mind she's like they tell you to not do that until you're married. But one of the things that she says is like they tell you to not do that until you're married and to like bat his hand away, but they don't tell you what to do when you don't want his hand to go away. And I was like, okay, Miss Girl, felt okay. Um, but yeah. And then like right after that, she's telling him like, no, it's okay, like, and essentially makes the comment of like, I want to be your first, and he tells her, you will be. And this part is like, I can't believe I missed this part the first time reading it. And it says he would tell her whatever she wanted to hear. That was the way he loved her. I can't believe I missed that part. Like, like they add so much. Like, there's so much to Mick that I feel like I missed. Like, I feel like I got it eventually, but it was right there and I totally missed it. And that's why I love this writing. But essentially, yeah, Mick and her get engaged, and she's super excited because Mick starts getting like bigger gigs and like starts getting more recognition, and she's getting really excited for him, and like her parents finally like meet Mick and get like more. like tried to like just get to know him. And one of the things her mom tells her is just like he looks like this famous person. And the only thing I have to say about that is that they tell you not to marry people that look like that because of just like there's like cheating stuff like that. And she makes the comment of like, well, I don't want to like I was meant for something better than the restaurant. And it's very much a dig at her mom, and her mom was just like, oh, okay. But she apologizes, but it's one of those things where she's just like, My mom would never understand, so why am I gonna take her advice?" And I feel like that's such a crazy, like, that's such a real dynamic, I feel like, for girls and their moms. Like, a lot of times I feel like there's time, like, I feel like I've done that. It's like, I'm not gonna listen to you, I don't want the same life as you. And then I don't listen to you, and then I realize I should have listened to you. Huh. But yeah, so that's one thing I thought was interesting. Um, but pretty much, that's one thing that happens. And then when talking, like when Mick and her dad talk, when Mick and June's dad talk, um, June's dad essentially gives Mick like a couple years to get famous, and then he's like, if it doesn't work out, like y'all have to take over the restaurant. Like, uh, I'm okay with this. Like, this is how you're plan to take care of her. If all else fails, like, y'all have to come take over the restaurant because that's the only way y'all are gonna be able to like make a living, and it's there. So, and Mick agrees to this, and that's something that June is very much like, you agreed to that, and he goes, I just told him what he wanted to hear because at the end of the day, I'm gonna get famous. Like, I know I'm gonna get famous. And I feel like the way he just treats other people shows that because he tells June what she wants to hear. And like essentially too, like she realizes that he lied to her when they first have sex. And that's something that she's just like, I'm a little hurt that he lied to me, but at the same time, this feels good, so I don't really care. And it's like, oh, but yeah, so it's like you see he lied to her and tells her what she wants to hear, and then she tells his dad what he wants to hear. And I thought that was like, that's your sign, girl. I think this is like technically her second. Um, yeah. To me, this is technically her second. Essentially, um, they get engaged, they're engaged for a while. He's getting famous, and then she's pregnant, which, like, Miss Girl, like, we all knew that was gonna happen. But yeah, she's pregnant. I thought I broke my book. She's pregnant. They move up the wedding, whatever, have the wedding. And he writes her a song. Like he sings a song for her called Warm June and sings it to her on their wedding. Then in July of 1958, Nina's born. So that makes sense. Like that timeline makes sense. But she's born, and in this time, like when June's pregnant, she has like all these dreams, and she's sharing with Mick that like she wants to have like a blue Cadillac. Like she wants to, especially because he's getting more fame and stuff, she wants to have a blue Cadillac. Obviously we know about her house that she wants, the kids that she wants. Oh yeah, that was another thing. Like she had dreamed of them getting married in a tent on the beach, and that happened. And so like all of these things that she shared with like dreams of hers are coming true, like Mick's making them happen. And so that's one of the things is that at the end of the chapter, I feel like it's really cute. It says, surely each one of her dreams hadn't come true all at once. She just had her baby. Mick bought her a house. He bought her a Cadillac. They just recently got married in the tent like she wanted to. And she goes into her master bedroom. And I love the way that it's written, but that she ran her right hand along the side of the sink, felt the smooth porcelain curve down, level out, and curve back up. And then she kept running her hand along the cold tile and rough grout until she hit the curve of the porcelain of her second sink. Miss Girl got her two sinks. She got her dreams. And this is how I know I wasn't paying attention because I have an annotation in here from the first time I read it. And I put, this is cute, which it is cute. Like, he fulfills all her dreams. Like, she's fully in love. And I love that for her. But I also see that he's lying to her. So there's that. But I told you, like they said, Miss Girl was free fallen for sure. So who knows? I'm now at 11 a.m. and we just got a little bit more about Jay, which is Nina's brother. But I think it's complemented very well because Nina and Jay are about a year apart. Um, so you get a little bit about Jay and the fact that like he met this girl like about a month ago and he's like in love with her. Um, and he's trying to like get her attention. And so he's goes to the place that she works to try to like see her. But it was kind of like a nice little part of Jay. But then we get the flashback, so it's now 1959, and it's talking about Mick and June, but when Jay was born. And so this is like the start of Mick's debut like album, debut tour. And it's kind of sad that Mick and June have are getting into like arguments about it, and they finally decide that when she calls Mick, like when she calls him, like he has to drop everything he's doing for 2 weeks to go be with her and the baby. Well, it's his last night in Vegas, and he's like, well, it's like my big break. Like, there's a lot of people here. Like, I can't do this. Like, I'm gonna perform the show. So he performs the show in Vegas and shows up like a day and a half after Jay is born. So it's kind of like I thought that was very nicely complimented. Um, but the end of the chapter is really interesting because, um, well, there's a mention that right as Jay's being brought into the world, Mick is performing his show and winking at a fan in the crowd. And then that chapter ends with Mick telling June that Warm June is actually going to be is like recorded and stuff, and it's gonna be like a song he puts out, and that she's excited because she's like, well, now they'll know that he's mine, because she's starting to suspect that he's been being with other people. So I don't know. I thought that was interesting, but it was a nice little like we got a lot more about like the present and what's going on with Jay in that hour, but it was just a nice intro. It was a nice intro to like when Jay's being born. So I like the dynamics that are going on with them at that point too. Like Mick and June at that point. So I thought that was interesting. If I haven't mentioned it already, I hate this man. I hate this man with everything I am. The fact that June says is that I think I knew it already, that you weren't being faithful, but I put it out of my head because I trusted what you said more than I trusted myself. I'm telling you, that part where she goes to dinner and thinks he didn't pay, it this is why it stuck. This right here is why it sticks in my head. She trusted him more than she trusted herself. Should she have done that? Probably not, but she did. I can't. I cannot. I'm fully crying again. I hate this. At this point, like, June knows that Mick has another son with somebody else and that he's only like a month younger than Jay. Um, so she locks him out of the house, whatever. He ends up coming back in. She's still upset and she decides not to like stay angry. And one of the things is, or she's still like upset and she's very angry, but she knows that like her anger is just like her anger is making her tired and she decides to go to sleep. She wakes up and she's like no longer angry, but she's very sad. Like she's in mourning. And one of the things that like makes me like, I just, this is why I love Taylor Jenkins Reid writing is Mick tries to put his arm around her and she lets him, like she doesn't have the energy to like brush it off. So when he puts his arm around her and gets closer, it says, and because June couldn't had not shrugged off his arm, Meg felt confident enough to kiss her neck, and because he had not shrugged off the small request, she did not know how to shrug off the larger one, and on it went. Small boundaries broken, snapped like tiny little twigs, so many that June barely noticed he was coming for the whole tree. Like, she's breaking little by little, but all those like little by littles are adding up to June as a whole. He's already broken her by lying to her. He's already broken her by, well, lying to her from the beginning and hurt her heart. Then he has this whole other kid. Her life that she thought she had, and the thought she like was so lucky to have, is not what it seems at all. And she's sad. And it makes me so sad. I'm literally only 86 pages. What the heck? I hate this. This is something I feel Taylor Jenkins Reid does, which I think I've already mentioned, but right now it's kind of like a little after she decides to accept Mick's apology for cheating on her. And now she essentially kind of lives off of the term like fake it till you make it and pretend that things are all right when they're not. One of the big things that she said, like one of the big things she does is just kind of like, she's like, she loves her life. She loves her life. She's happy that people are like, oh, she's a mixed wife, blah, blah, blah. It's already been mentioned 3 times. This is the third time it's mentioned. One of the things it says is that vodka helped June to kind of like be okay and like live with the fact that Mick cheated on her like that. This is the first time, or this is the most recent time it's mentioned. Right when she finds out, after she decides to accept Hudson as her own, she decides she wants to lock Mick out of the house. She takes a shot and she's like, okay, I'm gonna do it. And another time it's mentioned that June really likes the way alcohol makes her feel is a night when her and Mick get like really drunk on like the beach and stuff. And she makes it's made a mention that it scares her how good she likes it, like how smooth it goes down, how easy it goes down. So that's the first time. Then you get when she finds out about Hudson, and now she's still dealing with the fact that Hudson exists. Like Hudson's like the visualization, like the actual person of that shows proof of the like issues in her and Mick's relationship. And since it's something she lives with every day, she like drinks every day. And so I thought that was something. I just I just think this is the third time it's mentioned. Hmm. The fact that June is trying so hard to keep this man's attention, and he
This is
could.
what Overwatch PvE was supposed to be.
The fact that June's trying to keep this man's attention and he does not care. She gets her hair done, she loses weight, she has tips of her friends, she makes his favorite meal. Nope, he don't care. He don't come home. He don't care for her at all. I hate him. So Mick finally decides to leave the family, and after June is trying so hard to keep them together, he still leaves and he goes to be with this other woman. And June knows she has to like she's breaking, but she knows she has to rally herself because she has your kids. So she literally rallies. She like breaking down in the driveway, picks herself up, goes inside, opens up orange juice, pours some, and then puts some vodka in it. And this is how she goes on throughout her day. It's so sad. She ends up telling her mom, and one of the things that I love, like one of my favorite quotes from here, is that she tells herself, I will be more than just this. June thought to herself, I am more than the woman he left. I love that. Um, but I also like to mention too that she knows that not only she lost something, but also her kids lost something. And I feel like sometimes people often forget about that. Is like when somebody leaves like a family, it doesn't affect one person. It affects that entire family. So I thought that was a nice mention. Essentially, you kind of get a little bit of backstory about Mick and his parents, and you find out that his parents had like this back and forth relationship where they would get back together, break up, have like a fight, this whole thing. But that whenever his dad would leave, his mom would kind of lock herself up in the room, and Mick would be left to kind of fend for himself. Um, and it's just kind of interesting that you see that happening for him. But he finally decides, like years later, he decides like he's kind of tired of going with all these women. Like it's no longer appealing for him. It's boring, and he just decides one random night to go back to Malibu. When he goes back to Malibu, he's there and he's telling June like all the things that like he wants to do. Like he wants to be a dad, he wants to be part of the family, like he misses her, this and that. And I love this part because it says he was picking the lock on her heart like a burglar at the front door. Almost, almost, almost. And then I'm ready to be the dad they need. And he said, click, it slid open. This writing, it gets me every time. I love her. I love her so much. I'm sad again. I'm now at 2 p.m. again, and um, essentially, like, so far, right after she accepts Mick back, they end up like living together again, and the kids all kind of get along with her. Like Jane Hudson get along with Mick, and they're like fine, but Nina's like not too sure. She's a little confused. And it takes her a while. She finally warms up to him, and then June stays for a while, and him and or not June, Mick stays for a while, and him and June get married again, and it's cute and all. And then all of a sudden, Mick up and leaves again, and it's really sad because like Nina built up her, like it took her a long time to trust him, and then she trusted him enough and she truly felt he would never leave again, and then he left again, and that's really sad. But um when they have get divorced, Mick agrees to give June like money, like alimony and like child support and all of that, and he also gives her the house. Well, for months she's like checking and like nothing's in the mail. And so instead of going to him and telling her like, hey, like, what the heck, she decides to just kind of suck it up and go to her parents to work at the restaurant. And this part makes me so sad because it literally says June ended up at the exact place she had hoped Mick would save her from. She wanted to leave that place so bad, and I really truly feel like she could have if she never got with Mick. Like I feel like she would have found a way, and then she put all of her hopes and dreams into Mick because he let her believe in all of them. And yeah, and she's also naive, she's young. But yeah, it's so sad. But yeah. Oh, and then this time when they get married, they end up having Kit. So Kit's born in like 62 or something like that. 63. Um, but yeah, so now he leaves June again with not just 3 kids, now 4 kids. Okay, I'm in like hour 3. Not hour 3, I'm at 3 p.m. and we get a little like glimpse at what Hudson's doing at that time, and he's really kind of thinking about his mom. Um, we get a little bit more backstory about like Hudson's perception of his parents because he doesn't really grow up with Mick too much, and he also doesn't know Carol at all. And so he kind of like the way he believes is that we all have a little bit of our parents in us. So it's kind of interesting. Um, But then we get the past timeline, and it's 1971, and I have this annotation at the start of it, and it's kind of giving me. I think I'm kind of remembering what's going on, but I feel bad for June, but also feel like Nina. Nina takes care of her mom so much. I think this is the part that made me really sad last time. Um, so we're gonna see, but yeah, it's kind of just like a little quick, like glimpse at like Hudson, kind of thinking that he is like his parents, but he doesn't know that because he's never really met them. Um, but I don't know. There's some things for me that I'm kind of keeping track of. Like as we know, Hudson is dating Ashley, and Ashley is Jay's ex girlfriend, and he technically like takes her from him. So one of the things for me that kind of stood out was like he hopes he's not like Carol and her cowardness, but at the same time, it's like you're kind of like Carol because you hooked up with somebody while they were in a relationship with somebody else. And I know that's kind of like a little judgy, but it's kind of like you see like what's like there's a lot of similarities that I feel like are pulled between the different characters and their parents, and I that's one of the reasons I really like this book. So that was one thing for me. Um, but right now, I think we're about to really jump into like Nina and her mom's dynamic. A little bit before, I think around like the 2 o'clock mark, we get more about the Riva kids, and June goes back to work at the restaurant all these years and stuff, and Nina's helping out as she goes, and June looks up and she's like, she realizes that Nina's her from the past. And so she decides she doesn't want Nina doing that. She wants her to have something better. So she tells Nina to go with the kids, just like go, just leave it. And Nina's like, okay. And they end up finding this, they go to the beach, they find this like board, and they start like playing with it and stuff and like practicing. And they all are really fascinated, like, and enjoyed their time at the beach that day. And Nina goes to tell her mom, like, can I get a job at the restaurant so I can buy surfboards? And their mom tells her no. And then that next Christmas, their mom buys them all the surfboards. And that's something that I really love is that she really does not want Nina to end up like her in some ways. She really wants Nina to have like a different life and not be tied to the same things that she was tied to. And it's kind of one of the first times you see that. I thought that was interesting. But yeah, so I'm gonna jump into 1971. So we'll see what happens. So I'm finally at 4 p.m. and I already said that that part was gonna make me cry, and it did. But it's kind of just shows the unraveling of the family discovering June's alcoholism. So it kind of starts with Nina figuring out that she has alcoholism through um, the fire that happens in Malibu. Her mom tells her like grab like your most important things. So June grabs photo albums and a bottle of vodka. And then when they go back a couple days later, Nina sees that the bottle of vodka she had is fuller. So she's like, that's not the same bottle. And then her mom passes away, so their grandmother passes away, and June progressively just gets worse. And at this point, this is when Jay and Hudson start figuring out that she has a drinking problem. And um, there's a scene that it's kind of shown where Nina starts driving so that way they don't have to go out with their mom. Like Nina will drive them around so their mom doesn't because she's drunk. And like Jay and Hudson have this thing where it's like they know like as the day goes on their mom gets progressively worse. And so that's one thing. But they have this moment where Nina's like, I'm gonna go get milk because she knows that they need it and she knows that their mom cannot drive. So she's like, I'm gonna go get milk. She goes to get milk, and then Hudson's like, I'll go with you. And then Jay's like, yeah, me too. And they're gonna leave Kit there, but then they see that June, like, she lays on the couch and she like puts her arm out and she has a cigarette in her hand. And she puts her arm out, the end of the cigarette starts to burn Kit's hair. So they tell Kit like, "Come on, like you're coming with us." And Kit's confused, but she goes with them anyways. And she's like starting to be upset, and she has these feelings, and she doesn't know how to like describe them until she finally sees it on TV. And then there's one day where June burns their dinner, and Kit pretty much has like she's had it, and she's pissed, and she's like, "So we're just gonna act like nothing's wrong," and they're all kind of like, and it makes June upset. But then like she goes off and they talk to Kit, and one thing that I love is that they kind of have like a little moment, just the siblings, but then Nina tells them that it's gonna be okay, and they all trust her and they believe her when she says that. And even though they've been lied to by other people, by adults and stuff, but they know when Nina tells them something, like they can trust her for that. And that just kind of shows how Nina, like, does take care of the kids. Like, she takes care of her siblings and stuff. She takes care of her entire family. But I love this book. So it's 6 p.m. still. And you kind of just see, like, Kit goes over to get help from Nina for her outfit. And then the two boys go to get alcohol for the party. But in the flashback, you see that, like, I don't know if I mentioned it, but I didn't. So June dies. Um, Shortly after her mom passes, like her drinking gets worse. Whatever, the kids are worried about her, this and that. Well, not long later, um, there's just a night where Nina's going out with her friends, and she knows that Kit's going out with her friend, and the boys are going out, and then nobody was gonna be home. And she has this feeling of staying home, and she doesn't. And June stays home. She turns on the TV. She sees that Mick is on like a talk show, and if she finds out that Mick got married again, and so she's very hurt by this, and she kind of gets in her feelings, and she drinks a lot. And before you know it, she's at this point. I think it's mentioned that she drinks like 2 bottles, and she goes to get like a bath, and she ends up drowning. And Nina's the one to find her. And after that, Nina's the one that kind of takes on the burden of being responsible for her whole family. She's 17 at this point, and her siblings are still like younger than her. So Jay's about 16, Hudson's 16. Kit's, I don't even know how old Kit is, but Kit's younger. And so she's essentially just trying to like get by day, and she's still in charge of Riva Seafood, and she has like somebody who's a manager there, but she's like not doing well in school. She's trying to make sure everything's good. The brothers are all worried about like, are they gonna find out that like nobody's like no adult is watching us? And she's like, don't worry about it, don't worry about it. So yeah, she's trying to make ends meet. She's really struggling. She decides to like not go back to school, and she gets her brothers through school, and that's all that was important to her. And she's running the restaurant. Well, she just happens to be on the beach one day surfing, and these guys see her, and they're like, "Oh, like you'd be a great model. Like, come like see me at like the magazine I work for." She goes. They end up taking pictures of her, and before you know it, they start putting two and two together that she's McRiva's daughter, and her fame just grows. And at that point, she starts getting more and more work modeling. She's able to make Ramona manager and take over the day to day stuff at the restaurant, so she can just kind of do her own thing. Um, and so she's doing that. And essentially, like the first time she kind of realizes that they're doing okay, they decide to throw a party. And this is the first time like the family has like the infamous Riva part, like end of the summer Riva party. Um, so yeah, you kind of get that, and then yeah, you kind of get that, and that's pretty much it. And it's now closer to 7, but it's still 6. It's like 6:50, and like Nina's doing her hair and stuff, and you hear the doorbell ring, and I think Jay goes down to get it. They're going down to get it, and they open the door, and it's Brandon, who's Nina's ex-husband, and none of them were expecting that, and so she goes down there and she sees him and she's like, "What are you doing here?" And she knows, like, she has a feeling as to why he's there. And he literally tells her, "Can we talk?" And she's like, "Yeah." So they start like walking away from the family, and he goes, "I love you. Like, I want to come back home." Are you kidding me? This is Junimic 2.0. I'm upset. But right now we're going into the flashback of 1981, which is, I think if I'm correct, it's like Nina and Brandon's story. So, but I think after this we get 7 p.m. Yeah, right after this, 6 p.m. is over, and then we go into part two. So I have like a couple pages left, and then part two. Also, my big annotation for the entire part one. But I'm not okay.